Good afternoon, viewers. Market Headlines is ready to provide you a number of information from business, economic, and capital market sectors. With me, Claranta Wijaya, and this is Market Headline. The Central Statistic Agency reported that Indonesia's trade balance posted a surplus of $2 billion throughout February 2021. This positive result was driven by the increase in commodity prices, particularly for CPO, rubber, tin, and copper.
The Central Statistics Agency reported that Indonesia's trade balance posted a surplus of $2 billion throughout February 2021. This can be seen from the annual increase in exports reaching $15.27 billion or an increase of 8.56%. Meanwhile, imports were recorded at $13.26 billion or an increase of 14.86% on an annual basis. The positive performance of the trade balance was driven by the improvement in global crude oil prices, which reached an average of $60.36 per barrel, or a monthly increase of 13.52%. Meanwhile, non-oil and gas commodities also rose, such as CPO, rubber, tin, copper, and silver. On a monthly basis, the price of CPO rose 2.73% and increased 39.59% on an annual basis. Meanwhile, rubber rose 2.12% on a monthly basis, while on an annual basis it increased by 45.54%.
Pada bulan Februari ini, neraca perdagangan Indonesia kembali mengalami surplus sebesar 2,0 miliar. Dengan memperhatikan pertumbuhannya, performa ekspor dan impor pada bulan Februari tahun 2021 ini boleh dibilang bagus, karena ekspor yang sebesar 15,27 miliar tadi berarti secara Y-on-Y mengalami peningkatan 8,56%.
However, number of other commodity prices was observed to decline throughout February. On a monthly basis, coal fell 0.10%, but on an annual basis it rose 28.24%. Meanwhile, gold fell 3.15% on a monthly basis, but still rose 13.22% on an annual basis. From Jakarta, Raharjo Patmo for IDX Channel.
Moving on to the next coverage, the government has opened options to expand the criteria for granting luxury value-added tax discount incentives for new cars, which were effective since early March 2021. The Minister of Finance said that there is a possibility that a car over 1,500 cc will also receive tax discount facility.
The Minister of Finance, Sri Mulyani, opens options for expanding the incentive criteria for value-added tax on luxury goods for new cars. In a working meeting with the House of Representatives, the Finance Minister confirmed that she was preparing the criteria for cars over 1,500 cc that would also receive a luxury value-added tax discount facility in the near future. Sri Mulyani said that the expansion of the criteria for cars to be exempted from value-added tax on luxury goods will revert to the domestic content level, set at least 70%. Thus, cars of 1,500 cc to 2,500 cc, which have a domestic content level of 70%, will also receive the same incentives as the incentives given for cars of 1,500 cc and below.
Saya juga mendapatkan arahan dari Bapak Presiden untuk menyampaikan kalau dilihat yang memang di atas 1.500 asalkan TKDN-nya 70%, mungkin kita bisa pertimbangkan. Jadi ini kita sedang melakukan penyempurnaan mengenai hal itu. Asalkan TKDN-nya 70%, ini berarti mungkin bisa sampai ke 2.500.
Previously, the Finance Minister had issued a regulation on value-added tax discount incentives for luxury goods for new cars under 1,500 cc. These incentives are expected to trigger a recovery in people's purchasing power and encourage recovery in the manufacturing industry. From Jakarta, Raharjo Patmo for IDX Channel.
Government plans to cut luxury tax on cars with engine power over 1,500 cc, but however, it cuts many pros and cons. From economic observers' perspective, the incentives will attract medium and upper class people to buy more cars, and it will be contradictory to government's plan on environmental sustainability. Deputy Director of IndiHome, Eko Listianto, shared his perspective on government plans to cut luxury tax on cars with engine above 1,500 cc. And as a result, this will encourage the consumptions of upper middle class to buy cars above 1,500 cc. At first place, it is seen as good for increasing consumption and helping the automotive industry. But however, it is contradicting to the environmental perspective that the government is currently holding on.
Kebijakan ini tentu saja juga akan kontradiktif dengan upaya pemerintah untuk ke depan ya setelah pandemi COVID-19 ini, pemerintah juga punya semangat untuk bisa mendorong pertumbuhan ekonomi kita untuk lebih berwawasan terhadap lingkungan. Nah, kalau menurut saya kalau kebijakan ini yang dilakukan, maka pertama ini juga kontradiktif terhadap upaya tadi untuk ke depan lebih pembangunan ekonomi lebih berwawasan lingkungan juga tidak tercapai, dan yang kedua harus juga diperhitungkan secara cermat tentang ongkos yang harus ditanggung oleh pemerintah. Dalam hal ini adalah belanja pajaknya, begitu. Jangan sampai kemudian target-target pajak meleset karena upaya-upaya untuk memberikan insentif seluas-luasnya ke
Indonesia will put on hold use of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 shot in its vaccinations program. The government would await advice from World Health Organizations on how best to proceed. The government stated that the use of AstraZeneca vaccine in Indonesia has been temporarily suspended. Health Minister Budi Gunadi Sadikin said regarding AstraZeneca vaccine, a number of countries have decided to suspend the use of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine as a precaution following reports that some people have suffered blood clots after being given the jab. Now, Budi Gunadi Sadikin said that his party is still waiting for WHO's research on the side effects of the AstraZeneca vaccine. It is hoped that WHO confirmations regarding research for the side effects of the AstraZeneca vaccine can come out soon. This is because AstraZeneca vaccine has an expiration period until the end of May. From all sources, IDX Channel. Market headlines will be right back after this quick break. Stay tuned.
Dari awal memang harus dikerjain sendiri semua, harus tahu, ngerti dulu semua sendiri, baru kita bisa hire tim. Jadi kita bisa ngelatih timnya untuk melakukan job itu.
Dari Ayu apa nih untuk bisa mempunyai bisnis serupa?
Kalau misalnya mau start bisnis ya, misalnya di industri makanan itu mesti tahu bener, udah pasti, oh ini kalau kita jual ini marketnya ada. Dan banyak orang yang mencoba berbisnis karena ngelihat tren kan, nggak selalu harus ngikutin passion.
Welcome back to Market Headlines. Regarding the polemic of the government's plan to import rice, the Ministry of Agriculture claims staple food stocks are safe until the end of May 2021, including rice stocks, which are predicted to have a surplus of 12.56 million tons.
Regarding the polemic of the government's plan to import rice, Secretary General of the Ministry of Agriculture, Maman Rusmona, claimed staple food stocks are safe until the end of May 2021. Even rice stocks are confirmed to be a surplus of 12.56 million tons, because currently it is entering the harvest season. In addition, the Ministry of Agriculture stated that it has made a number of efforts to ensure the availability of staple food before Eid al-Fitr, including encouraging regional heads to absorb grain and stabilize prices during the main harvest, optimizing warehouses or food barns in collaboration with Bulog.
Sampai dengan akhir Mei 2021, ketersediaan pangan pokok seperti beras, jagung, kedelai, bawang merah, cabai, daging, dan gula dalam keadaan cukup. Khususnya beras, pada saat ini dalam kondisi aman karena petani memasuki masa panen raya. Neraca beras sampai akhir Mei 2021 diperkirakan surplus 12,56 juta ton beras.
The Ministry of Agriculture ensures that it will continue to synergize with various institutions and local governments to achieve adequate food availability ahead of Ramadan and Eid al-Fitr, and to secure food availability until the end of 2021. From Jakarta, Rizka Ayu for IDX Channel.
The government's plan to import 1 million tons of rice has sparked a polemic. Several parties have criticized this plan. Not only that, the government has also stated that it will import salt this year, which has also drawn pros and cons. But however, what is actually the main issue of the matter of importing rice and salt? So let's just review it in the following infographic. So let's jump into the first graphic. Here it is. We can see Indonesia's rice productions through your screen. We can see from January 2020 to December 2020, the highest level of productions that Indonesia can bear is in April 2020, which is 5.6 million tons of rice productions. However, in the December 2020, the number shrinkaged to be 0.93 million tons only for the rice productions. And then we can see the fluctuative in here, but then the absence of single data set has prompted the government's plan to import 1 million tons of rice and sparking a polemic. When referring to the data from the Ministry of Agriculture and the Central Statistic Agency, the rice stock is still sufficient and does not need the imports. And in the other hand, data on the government rice reserve shows that a threat of a rice deficit and must be imported. And the Ministry of Agriculture and BPS recorded that the national rice stock until the end of December 2020 was as much as 7.38 million tons. And BPS, or Statistik Indonesia, also projects that the productions of a mild, dry, unhalted rice in January 2021 up to April 2021 to be 25.37 billion tons. And the number is up actually 26.68% year on year. And if converted into rice, the potential for productions will reach 14.54 million tons, or rose by 26.84% on the annual basis. And of course, it is not enough to just look at the level of production. So what about the prognosis of the rice supply and demand in Indonesia? So the data is in the next graphic. Through your screen, we can see the availability, and it is still a prognosis of the availability and the needs for rice in Indonesia. See, for productions, Indonesia is capable of producing 17,511 million tons. And however, when we take a look at the needs, it's 12,336 million tons. But however, if we take a look at the rice balance, it's in 12 1,000 million tons. And yes, the Ministry of Agriculture estimates that domestic rice productions will reach 2.97 million tons in May 2021. Thus, the national potential for rice productions is 17.5 million tons. If the stock is added at the end of December 2020, the total national rice availability will reach 24.9 million tons by May. And meanwhile, the total demand for rice is 12.33 million tons in the same month. And as a result, there will be a rice surplus of 12.6 million tons. These data are the basis for the projections of the rice imports. In addition, improper rice import policies can also harm farmers because the price at the business level will decrease. And if imports are carried out at the wrong time, such as during the harvest time or the rice stock is in the surplus, and therefore to overcome similar problems in the future, it is important for government to conduct a single data collections on the food stock, including rice. And not only that, previously the government had also stated that it would import salt. So let's firstly take a look at the salt import data in the previous years in the next graphic. And yes, through your screens, we can see all about salt, about the needs, the imports, and the national salt productions. First of all, we can take a look at during 2016 to 2019. We can see the disparity between needs, imports, and also productions. Let's take a look in 2019 data. Whereas the needs is 4.2 million tons, but however, the productions is only 2.3 million tons of salt. And when we talk about the imports, Indonesia needs to import it by 2.7 million tons of salt. And the government has decided on the salt import this year. And the Minister of Maritime Affairs and Fisheries, Saksikan said that the government is still waiting for the data related to salt demand in Indonesia. When there is a shortage of supply, the government will cover it with imports. Meanwhile, House of Representatives member Ono Surono stated that the House would oversee the import of salt by the government so that the policy would not be burdensome for the people's salt farmers. And he added that the problem of salt in Indonesia has not been resolved because there are differences in the data between the Ministry of Trade and the Ministry of Maritime Affairs and Fisheries. And supposedly, the government should know the real needs of the origins of the supplies, which are local and industrial salt. And then, what needs to be examined further? How much is the need and the use of salt in 2020 and also the projections in 2021. So let's take a look at the data in the next graphic. Here it is. Through the next graphic, we can see how much we need the salt and the use of salt in Indonesia by 2020 in 2021. First of all, the total need in 2020 is 4.46 million tons of salt. And here it is a fun fact. 83.38% is for the industry. And however, when we talk about the projections of salt needs in 2021, it is projected Indonesia needs around 4.6 million tons salt. And also, it is projected that 84% of whole salt needs is for the industry. And through your screen also, we can see that the top 3 salt users in 2020, we can see that chemical, pharmaceutical industry need the most of salt, and food industry, and also pulp and paper industry. And yes, the Minister of Industry said that the ministry will verify the needs for salt or sugar imports against industrial needs. According to him, the verifications process will be carried out strictly. Agus said that the needs for salt for the industry continues to increase in line with the growth of the salt user industry. On the other hand, President Jokowi once stated that Indonesia could become self-sufficient in salt as soon as possible. Unmitigated, the government has targeted self-sufficiency in salt to be realized in 2015, but however, this target was missed. And regarding this, President Jokowi revealed several factors that made the target of self-sufficiency in the salt miss. According to him, the import policy was carried out because domestic salt production was low, and meanwhile, no resolutions has been made to increase salt productions. So this can be said to be the government's unfinished big homework under Jokowi's leadership. And yes, viewers, hopefully policies related to imports no longer invite polemics that can be counterproductive. And of course, various efforts to improve domestic productions need to be carried out by the government to reduce the import rate. And yes, viewers, stay tuned to market headlines because we will be right back after this quick break.
Kereta api Persero yang kembali menambah fasilitas layanan pemeriksaan genos.
Hello, I'm Clara Antawijaya. I'm associate producer and news presenter on Market Headlines. As Market Headlines starts at 4:30 p.m., which is in line with the closing market, therefore we summarize market conditions only for you. And my job in here as a journalist, I give concise and accurate news for the audience. And also, being a journalist is not only a job for me, but it is also a passion.
Presiden Joko Widodo memiliki optimisme yang tinggi terkait dengan proses vaksinasi nasional yang sedang dilakukan saat ini. Bagaimana tanggapan dari pengusaha dengan angka ini?
Tentu membuat kita harus lebih berhati-hati.
Langkah apa yang tepat dilakukan untuk bisa meningkatkan pemahaman masyarakat?
Komunikasi publik adalah kunci. Jadi kita harus bisa menunjukkan kepada masyarakat bahwa vaksinasi itu penting.
Maksudnya kalau keju itu artisan tuh apa ya?
Artisan itu sebenarnya kata-kata untuk menyebut kalau produk kita ini masih handmade dan selalu dibuat dalam bentuk yang belum terlalu komersil, belum terlalu banyak.
Yes, viewers, let's take a look at Jakarta Composite Index and Trader movement. So earlier today, JCI was open at the level of 6,326.7, and then approaching the closing time of the first session, the index was on the level of 6,331.35, and the index was showing weakening trend by the second session closing time. The index was closed at a level of 6,309.69. In short, JCI went down 0.23%. Next, we are going to see the sectoral movement. Leading the dynamics of today's trading, we got trade as a leader of the strength in the trend that went up 0.78%. Misk industry went up 0.12%, and meanwhile, mining went down 1.61%, and agriculture went down 1.44%. Moving on to the top gainers and top losers, here are the key highlights from today's trading sessions. We got BBRI that went up 3.28%. We got Agro that went up 4.71%. We got Astro International that went up 0.45%. And Indosat that went up 9.78%. Meantime, for the top losers for today's trading sessions, we got Aneka Tambang that went down 2.99%. We got BBCA that went up 0.6%. We got TINS that went down 6.84%. And BMRI that went down 1.5%. Next, we're going to see the intraday movement of rupiah towards US dollar. So rupiah opened at the level of 14,424. Rupiah was also showing strengthening trend towards US dollar. It was closed at the level of 14,391. In summary, rupiah went down 0.04%. Bank Mandiri will distribute dividends to shareholders amounting to 10.27 trillion, or around 60% of the 2020 net profits. The dividend is equivalent to 220 rupiah per share. Taking into account the 60% of 2020 net profit, Bank Mandiri will pay dividends of around 6.16 trillion to the state treasury. Meanwhile, as much as 40% of the last year's net profit will be retained earnings. President Director of Bank Mandiri, Darmawan Junaidi, stated that retained earnings will be optimized for company's digital business transformations, including the company's digital banking, which has now been developed from Mandiri Online to Livin by Mandiri. From all sources, IDX Channel. Step aside from market conditions as coronavirus pandemic takes a big role on current economic situations. Here it is an update data about coronavirus globally. And the news close our market headlines today. Please enjoy our next program on IDX Channel, your trustworthy economic business and capital market channel. I'm Clara Wijaya. Have a nice evening and stay safe.